Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. This morning, we will be in Nehemiah chapter 12, verse 27 through chapter 13, verse 31. At the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, they sought out the Levites from all the places they lived to bring them to Jerusalem to celebrate the dedication joyfully with songs of thanksgiving and songs accompanied by cymbals, harps, and lyres. The singers were also assembled from the district around Jerusalem and from the settlements of the Netophathites, and from Beth Gilgal, and from the fields of Geba and Asmaveth, for the singers had built settlements for themselves around Jerusalem. When the priests and Levites had purified themselves, they purified the people, the gates, and the wall. I brought the leaders of Judah up on top of the wall, and I appointed 2 large choirs to give thanks. One was to proceed on the top of the wall southward toward the dung gate. Going after them were Hoshaiah, half the leaders of Judah, Azariah, Ezra, Meshullam, Judah, Benjamin, Shemaiah, Jeremiah, some of the priests with trumpets, Zechariah son of Jonathan, the son of Shemaiah, the son of Mattaniah, the son of Micaiah, the son of Zechariah, the son of Asaph, and his colleagues, Shemaiah, Azarel, Milalai, Gilai, Mai, Nethanel, Judah, and Hanani, with musical instruments, of David the man of God. Ezra the scribe led them. They went over the fountain gate, and continued directly up the steps of the city of David to the ascent, on the ascent to the wall. They passed the house of David and continued on to the water gate toward the east. The second choir was proceeding in the opposite direction. I followed them, along with half of the people, on top of the wall, past the tower of the ovens to the broad wall, over the Ephraim gate, the Jeshanah gate, the fish gate, the tower of Hananel, and the tower of 100. To the sheep gate, they stopped at the gate of the guard. Then the 2 choirs that gave thanks took their stations in the temple of God. I did also, along with half the officials with me. And the priests, Eliakim, Maaseiah, Miniamin, Micaiah, Elioenai, Zechariah, and Hananiah, with their trumpets, and also Maaseiah, Shemaiah, Eleazar, Uzi, Jehohanan, Malchijah, Elam, and Ezer. The choirs sang loudly under the direction of Jezrahiah. And on that day they offered great sacrifices and rejoiced, for God had given them great joy. The women and children also rejoiced. The rejoicing in Jerusalem could be heard from far away. On that day men were appointed over the storerooms for the contributions, first fruits and tithes, to gather into them from the fields of the cities the portions prescribed by the law for the priests and the Levites. For the people of Judah took delight in the priests and Levites who were ministering. They performed the service of their God and the service of purification, along with the singers and gatekeepers, according to the commandment of David and his son Solomon. For long ago, in the days of David and Asaph, there had been directors for the singers and for the songs of praise and thanks to God. So in the days of Zerubbabel and then the days of Nehemiah, all Israel was contributing the portions for the singers and gatekeepers, according to the daily need. They also set aside the portion for the Levites, and the Levites set aside the portion for the descendants of Aaron. On that day, the book of Moses was read aloud in the hearing of the people. They found written in it that no Ammonite or Moabite may ever enter the assembly of God, for they had not met the Israelites with food and water, but instead had hired Balaam to curse them. Our God, however, turned the curse into a blessing. When they heard the law, they removed from Israel all who were of mixed ancestry. But prior to this time, Eliashib the priest, a relative of Tobiah, had been appointed over the storerooms of the temple of our God. He made for himself a large storeroom, where previously they had been keeping the grain offering, the incense, and the vessels, along with the tithes of the grain, the new wine and the olive oil, as commanded for the Levites, the singers, the gatekeepers, and the offering for the priests. During all this time I was not in Jerusalem, for in the 32nd year of King Artaxerxes of Babylon I had gone back to the king. After some time I had requested leave of the king, and I returned to Jerusalem. Then I discovered the evil that Eliashib had done for Tobiah by supplying him with a storeroom in the courts of the temple of God. I was very upset, and I threw all of Tobiah's household possessions out of the storeroom. Then I gave instructions that the storerooms should be purified, and I brought back the equipment of the temple of God, along with the grain offering and the incense. I also discovered that the grain offerings for the Levites had not been provided, and that as a result, the Levites and the singers who performed this work had all gone off to their fields. So I registered a complaint with the leaders, asking, "Why is the temple of God neglected?" Then I gathered them and reassigned them to their positions. Then all of Judah brought the tithe of the grain, the new wine, and the olive oil to the storerooms. I gave instructions that Shelemiah the priest, Zadok the scribe, and a certain Levite named Pedaiah be put in charge of the storerooms, and that Hanan, son of Zachar, the son of Mattaniah, be their assistant, for they were regarded as trustworthy. It was then their responsibility to oversee the distribution to their colleagues. Please remember me for this, O my God, and do not wipe out the kindness that I have done for the temple of my God and for its service. In those days I saw people in Judah treading wine presses on the Sabbath, bringing in heaps of grain and loading them onto donkeys, along with wine, grapes, figs, and all kinds of loads, and bringing them to Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. So I warned them on the day that they sold these provisions. The people from Tyre, who lived there, were bringing fish and all kinds of merchandise, and were selling it on the Sabbath to the people of Judah, and in Jerusalem of all places. So I registered a complaint with the nobles of Judah, saying to them, "What is this evil thing that you are doing, profaning the Sabbath day? Isn't this the way your ancestors acted, causing our God to bring on them and on this city all this misfortune? And now you are causing even more wrath on Israel, profaning the Sabbath like this." When the evening shadows began to fall on the gates of Jerusalem before the Sabbath, I ordered the doors to be closed. I further directed that they were not to be opened until after the Sabbath. I positioned some of my young men at the gates so that no load could enter on the Sabbath day. The traders and sellers of all kinds of merchandise spent the night outside Jerusalem once or twice, but I warned them and said, "Why do you spend the night by the wall? If you repeat this, I will forcibly remove you." From that time on, they did not show up on the Sabbath. Then I directed the Levites to purify themselves and come and guard the gates in order to keep the Sabbath day holy. For this, please remember me, O my God, and have pity on me in keeping with your great love. Also in those days I saw the men of Judah who had married women from Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. Half of their children spoke the language of Ashdod, or the language of one of the other peoples mentioned, and were unable to speak the language of Judah. So I entered a complaint with them. I called down a curse on them, and I struck some of the men, and pulled out their hair. I had them swear by God, saying, "You will not marry off your daughters to their sons, and you will not take any of their daughters as wives for your sons or for yourselves." Was it not because of things like these that King Solomon of Israel sinned? Among the many nations there was no king like him. He was loved by his God, and God made him king over all Israel, but the foreign wives made even him sin. Should we then, in your case, hear that you do all this great evil, thereby being unfaithful to our God by marrying foreign wives? Now one of the sons of Joiada, son of Eliashib the high priest, was a son-in-law of Sanballat the Horonite, so I banished him from my sight. Please remember them, O my God, because they have defiled the priesthood, the covenant of the priesthood, and the Levites. So I purified them of everything foreign, and I assigned specific duties to the priests and the Levites. I also provided the wood offering at the appointed time, and also for the first fruits. Please remember me for good, O my God. So you have this dedication of the wall happening first. And it's this big thing because they have two choirs marching along the wall and echoing praise back and forth. And then after that, you have the book of Moses read, and them acting according to it. And Nehemiah, after the dedication of the wall, in 13 verse 6, "During all this time I was not in Jerusalem, for in the 32nd year of King Artaxerxes of Babylon I had gone back to the king, and after some time I had requested leave of the king." So Nehemiah leaves for a period of time to go back to his position serving the king. And then he asks leave again to see how Jerusalem is doing. And this Eliashib, who was a relative of Tobiah, this same Tobiah that proved to be such a thorn in Nehemiah's side during the rebuilding of the wall, along with Gershom and one other, I can't remember. But yeah, he made a room for him in the temple itself. So Nehemiah was none too happy about this. But yeah, it was for the priests in particular to serve in the temple. And I don't think stay in the temple. I think people had to stay outside of the temple. I don't think it was ever really used as a dwelling. I don't think its proper use was as a dwelling. So, lawful. And then they weren't feeding the Levites, and as a result of that, the Levites had gone off and gotten jobs elsewhere. And so Nehemiah lodges a complaint, hey, feed the Levites. And so they do. And then the Sabbath was being used to do work, and so Nehemiah shuts the doors on days that these traders were coming. And finally, you've got men of Judah marrying women from Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab, and him being very angry about that, and making them swear not to. So, I think that's the end of Nehemiah here. Which, yeah, you see a lot of encouraging things in Nehemiah and Ezra, with the people turning back to God, rebuilding the wall, rebuilding the temple. And then you've got some troubling and disquieting things at the end where he's like, and even despite all of this, they're still really quick to turn away from God and not do what God commanded them to do. So, yeah. Carrying on, 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 3 through 16. But I want you to know that Christ is the head of every man, and the man is the head of a woman, and God is the head of Christ. Any man who prays or prophesies with his head covered disgraces his head. But any woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered disgraces her head, for it is one and the same thing as having a shaved head. For if a woman will not cover her head, she should cut off her hair. But if it is disgraceful for a woman to have her hair cut off or her head shaved, she should cover her head. For a man should not have his head covered, since he is the image and glory of God, but the woman is the glory of the man. For man did not come from woman, but woman from man. Neither was man created for the sake of woman, but woman for a man. For this reason, a woman should have a symbol of authority on her head because of the angels. In any case, in the Lord, woman is not independent of man, nor is man independent of woman. For just as woman came from man, so man comes through woman, but all things come from God. Judge for yourselves. Is it proper for a woman to pray to God with her head uncovered? Does not nature itself teach you that if a man has long hair, it is a disgrace for him, but if a woman has long hair, it is her glory, for her hair is given to her for a covering? If anyone intends to quarrel about this, we have no other practice, nor do the churches of God. So, popular section here. So, this is all, I think, couched in 11:2, maintaining the traditions just as I pass them on to you, which I guess, yeah, I will say also towards that in 11:16, we have no other practice. So this was kind of a universal practice in the early church. Regarding head coverings and so on and so forth, you've got regarding the coverings for a woman in 11:15, her hair is given to her for a covering. Yeah. I don't know. I guess a lot of this is cultural. But it's definitely one that I have questions about, too. So. Okay, I guess carrying on here. Psalm 35, verses 1 through 16. O Lord, fight those who fight with me. Attack those who attack me. Grab your small shield and large shield and rise up to help me. Use your spear and lance against those who chase me. Assure me with these words, I am your deliverer. May those who seek my life be embarrassed and humiliated. May those who plan to harm me be turned back and ashamed. May they be like wind-driven chaff as the Lord's angel attacks them. May their path be dark and slippery as the Lord's angel chases them. I did not harm them, but they hid a net to catch me and dug a pit to trap me. Let destruction take them by surprise. Let the net they hid catch them. Let them fall into destruction. Then I will rejoice in the Lord and be happy because of his deliverance. With all my strength I will say, O Lord, who can compare to you? You rescue the oppressed from those who try to overpower them, the oppressed and needy from those who try to rob them. Violent men perjure themselves and falsely accuse me. They repay me evil for the good I have done. I am overwhelmed with sorrow. When they were sick, I wore sackcloth and refrained from eating food. If I am lying, may my prayers go unanswered. I mourn for them as I would for a friend or my brother. I bowed down in sorrow as if I were mourning for my mother. But when I stumbled, they rejoiced and gathered together. They gathered together to ambush me. They tore at me without stopping to rest. When I tripped, they taunted me relentlessly and tried to bite me. Interesting. The psalmist here is asking the Lord for his help to fight those who fight against the psalmist. And particularly because 35:12, they repay me evil for the good I have done. And in particular, these people whom the psalmist wants God to fight against. He, when they were sick, prayed for them and mourned for them. But when he stumbled, they taunted him relentlessly and set traps for him. So, interesting. Like, even through all that, the psalmist isn't taking vengeance for himself, but relying on the vengeance of God. And finally, Proverbs 21, verses 17 through 18. The one who loves pleasure will be a poor person. Whoever loves wine and anointing oil will not be rich. The wicked become a ransom for the righteous, and the faithless are taken in the place of the upright. Yeah, particularly with the one who loves pleasure will be a poor person. If all you're doing is spending your money on things that give you pleasure, then those are normally all things that are wearing out and taking your money when and not actually building up any money for you. So. Yep, I think that's right. Okay, well, thanks for joining me today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.